those of you who don't know it and don't keep track of my birthday was in January, which is very important because Dick Nixon's birthday is in January, and Elvis Presley is in January, and Jesus Christ is in January, as you know, or December rather, as a Capricorn. I'm going to talk for about an hour and a half, because this is the first time I've been able to talk in 40 years, or 34, whatever it is since I left. Lou Frey is a marvelous young man, or was when I first met him, and he wasn't much, but he did have a magnificent fiancée who's here tonight, this afternoon, and I'm so pleased that she's still taking good care of him. They've done a great job together as mother and father now, and I first met them at the basement of the Cherry Plaza Hotel. It's no longer anymore, but Republicans had to find little places to hide in order to gather together. I'm going to explain something to younger people. How many young people here would like to be governor? Well, we need some blood. We need some blood. You see all these older gentlemen that spoke earlier? They are all fruit of my loins. That's a bit of that. If it wasn't for me, they wouldn't exist, because they marshaled the forces of the Democratic Party and cleansed the temple, as it were, and created marvelous candidates. Unfortunately, some of them are too damn good for the Republicans, and we're happy that we're making progress. I'm going to give you a little history, because I don't think you really understand the changes, and then I don't think you know the things that have to happen. Things have to happen now in Florida because it's a desperate situation. Desperate. We have so many more people. Why, they should have had a big sign up, "Don't come down from Alabama," when I came down. Now we have no way of stopping the people from coming here, and no way to change the nature of our failures. We have failures that are surfacing more and more, and all these gentlemen who spoke to you did a great job while they were there, but they were curtailed in doing it because they only could serve at the max was 8 years. And when I was elected 40 years ago, when I was a bright, shining young man, now that I'm a bright, shining older person, there was no way that you could continue in office as governor. You were immediately elected. You were lame duck, because we had a constitution of 1867 or 8 or 9 that precluded the federal government sending down governors to run the state, and therefore they created a system where the governor could not succeed himself, and you should remember that. Then during my tenure, we had the Constitutional Revision Commission that I sat with them and listened to them and watched them, and they thought about having a new constitution. And in that constitution, they wanted the governor at least to work for 4 years, because they gave him an opportunity to succeed himself if, in fact, he could get the people to believe that he really did work. That's not easy in some cases, mine in particular. But that is the history, and you've got to remember. Are you getting bored of this yet? How about the old people over there? I'll talk to you privately. Let me tell you how it was. The government was created to be a non-government, a non-governor. And they be sure that nothing ever happened bad. The powers of that day, be they who they were, created a cabinet system for the state of Florida. And that meant that 6 people were elected to 6 different offices, and stood there as a cabinet group. And they voted, and they let one more fellow come in. The governor created a 7. So 6 people who could be elected in perpetuity for life. Just like 67 sheriffs, write that down, 67 sheriffs, in 67 counties, who could only requirement to be a good law enforcement officer, Remember, I'm talking about sheriffs now. The only requirement, those of you out in the state listening, okay, was the ability to hear thunder and see lightning and get reelected. And therefore, corruption was rampant in 67 counties. Mental corruption, maybe not terrible corruption, maybe a smattering of a little prostitution here and there in Miami, perhaps a little bootlegging in Crawfordville, which is below Tallahassee, but be that as it may, there was also 67 other people that you had to see if you wanted to be governor. And they happened to run the school system of the county. They were called superintendents or commissioners of education, and they too were elected in perpetuity because all they had to do was hear thunder, see lightning, major requirements. And what happened when I became governor, I wrote a white paper and I said, you know, this is wrong. My children are not getting educated. I had to start a school in order to get them educated. Is this the sort of thing I should talk about?
You're doing great, Governor. Talk into the mic, if you would, please, sir.
I'll talk where I want to talk.
I know. Nothing has changed.
Well, I'm going to tell you, a lot of blessing things. So you begin to feel how the government was, and it was all Democrats, which is great. I was a Democrat. Everybody had to be a Democrat. I was a Democrat at the University of Alabama, where I'm the only person in my family ever went to real school, the University of Alabama, which of course is much better than some other schools I could name. Well, I dug the dirt for this one, so I'm not going to name this one. I dug the dirt that started this place. That's how important government is, how exciting it can be. But I was about to tell you, as we think about all these Democrats, and everybody had to be one. There were good ones, bad ones, little ones, big ones, but we weren't teaching. Now let me take you back just for a moment to that Constitutional Revision Commission that met in 1967. I was sitting up there because I hadn't been sworn in yet. It was actually 66, wasn't it? And I was sitting up there listening in the Senate chambers, listening to all the brains of Florida that were in front of me. They were all members of that commission. A lot of smart guys, really nice guys, a lot of them. One sitting right over there was ex-Governor Charlie Johns. He wasn't too bright, but he was the ex-governor, Charlie Johns. He got to be governor by accident of a death. But then again, over here on the left-hand side of me, and the chairman, of course, was...
Mountain to Mojave.
This will have it? Okay. Yes. The chairman was a very famous lawyer, was there, and I kept watching this young man come back and forth, up to the speaker's rostrum there in the Senate building, Senate chamber. And finally, I turned to him and whispered, because I wasn't supposed to say anything. I said, "What's that young man over there that keeps coming? I could really do something with him, and I just got elected myself, you know." I said, "Man, he's got some polish and some talent. That's a Democrat I could like. Get rid of all those old puzzle-gutted crooks that are the other kind." I said, "What is that fellow's name? Because I want to remember him." Chesterfield Smith turned to me and said, "His name's Reuben Askew." And so, you see, you can be the spawning ground of change if you make some changes. Because Reuben Askew then went on ahead and decided he'd like to become governor. Very logical thing. But he was the underdog of all underdogs of all times in the sense of the other Democrats' aspirants. But he very wisely picked a man who was in power at that time in the cabinet, and he took his strength, maybe not his attitudes and everything, but this man had a relationship throughout the state with the junior chambers of commerce, and the power and the way and the perseverance that they both showed, they thrust out and got Reuben nominated, which was a great thing. It was terrible for me, but great for the state. And from that, the rest of these gentlemen who followed, I can now say, quite frankly, are fruit of my loins, are they not? And so we're so happy about it. But we really don't care about what they think. That is, this crowd here doesn't think. I'm not talking about them. They just want to say some of their old friends. We have a contest, you and I, for tomorrow. Do you want to know what the contest is? It's the same contest that existed when I wrote the white paper in 1966 on education. I said, I coined these words, the push-outs and drop-outs and shove-outs of our educational system amount that do not finish the 9th grade range in something like 30 or 40%. Now that is a terrible number that do not qualify themselves to go to work. And whose fault is that? It's those 67 superintendents that are elected forever. Okay. And every man since then has taken charge of the governor's seat, has tried to change that. The ratio of children today, the only thing we've got today is a teachers union, which I object to. Reuben liked them, I didn't. Be that as it may, that's what politics is about. Like, dislike, want, desire, care. The ratio of push-outs, shove-outs, and drop-outs in today's educational system of Florida is 30 to 40% that don't finish the 9th grade. And unfortunately, I would guess 80% of those children are black. Now, it's totally unfair, and it continues to be unfair. Until we do something about education, I'm saying to the next governor, and the next governor, and the next one, do something. Get it changed. I'm not laying any blames anywhere except you haven't changed the system. We have commissioners of education in 67 counties, and from that they elect a school board in 67 counties, and it is not functioning well. Well, that's enough. How'd you like that much? Are you ready to do something about it? You know what I'm talking about. You went to school. You got here, didn't you? Didn't you see some of those other kids not make it? That's the tragedy. We're creating our own ghettos and perpetrating a fraud. I heard about the wonderful lotto. It's up to 20 million again. My wife, Erica, she bets every week. Not on Wednesday, just on the weekend. And we're going to be rich when we win the lotto. In the meantime, I tell her that's gambling and it's wrong. She says, when I have the money, you'll like it. And I said, you're damn right. I don't say damn right. I'm afraid of my wife. Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you, I was in a lot of things, but I was the most productive governor in Florida's history. I had 2 children on state time, on state property, and they've gone on to be just great. And they got educated good, and now I want to say that I'll match my record of production against any of the other governors. I have 7 children, 12 grandchildren, and with any luck today, over in St. Johns County, I may become a great-grandfather. Now that's Of course, I don't think any of my son-in-laws are adequate. However, I'm very, very careful about what I say. This is the sort of thing that's good politics.
Yeah, that was great. We'll run you again.
My son-in-law, who's going to be the grandfather of my soon-to-be great-granddaughter, named Riley, if she ever shows up, He's going to be here the 26th, and this is the 27th, isn't he? Women. I admonished training children is very difficult. I admonished all my 4 daughters to do anything, stay away from men. I told them how bad men were and how to watch this, watch that. And I said, and above all, never be seen with anybody from the University of Georgia. That's because at Alabama we hate Georgia. It's not simple, we hate them. And so my daughter Kitty came in one day and said, Daddy, I want you to meet Andrew Crenshaw. He's a 4th generation graduate of the University of Georgia. I said, well, thank God, because now he's going to be the grandfather, that I'm going to be the great-grandfather, but more particularly, Andrew went on and became a state senator and became president of the Senate, and now serving our nation as a congressman. So I'm very pleased with him, and I say how happy I am that we have a University of Georgia graduate in our family, because it changes from white trash to real nice people. Now, I'm telling you, I'm tired of talking about education, and I'm tired of you wanting to have a ghetto so that you can drive by it and stay out of it. That's where the drugs are coming from, and those children have no choice. And that's why the drug dealers of today are no longer cocaine, crack. All these things have happened since I became governor. Drugs were not a problem. And today, what is it, meth?
Methadone.
How come you know all that? Isn't that a tragedy? The truth is, sure. And who are they using to transport and sell and use this product? Any child under 16, because they can't enforce the laws against the 16s and less. Clever, beyond words. Let's go back to 40 years ago when I told you about those 67 sheriffs. There was no law enforcement agency in the state. I became the chief law enforcement officer of the state, and I looked around and I said, where are my troops? I say, well, you've got 67 sheriffs. Well, remember, the executive enforces law. The executive is important to do the enforcement, but the legislative is sitting over there, they're just supposed to think of laws, stay out of everything else. So we had to have a law enforcement agency, so I started an unconstitutional act with a private war on crime, privately financed, and it worked very well. Finally, we got the legislature to agree that there was crime in Florida, and we created the Bureau of Law Enforcement, which is today a great shining example. And Reuben Askew took it over and did great. The next governor did great. And they're a great industry, but they still do something to do, isn't there? There's more to do about drugs than there ever has been, because we're going to get in the school system more than we are to reach in and be sure all of our children don't have to peddle drugs, but they get a 12th grade certificate so they can get a job. If you can't work at Wendy's, what do you do logically? You hold it up. And if you hold it up enough Wendy's, you buy a big car and be way ahead of everybody else. But that isn't what we're about. We're not a lawless state. We care about each other. Now I'm going to warn you. I mean, how many subjects have I talked about? You doing all right? The last subject is water. Put the water down. Imagine having to carry a bottle of water around. The seriousness of the water shortage in Florida is phenomenal. The legislature hasn't looked at it. The other governors have been great workers in following my environmental suggestions. They've added and made things. The EPA of the United States of America started in the Kirk administration when Nat Reed, said, I want to explain to you, Governor, what environment means. I want to explain to you how you spell conservation. He realized I'd been at the University of Alabama and I didn't spell too well. That's why he was saying that. And that's what we learned about it. And from there, it became our Department of Environmental Regulation here in Florida. And from that, we taught Nixon how to spell environment, how to spell, what's the other one? Conservation, that's right. Well, you're doing good. And from that came the President's Council on the Environment, which was about 20 or 25 young men in a little office across from the White House called the President's Council on the Environment. From that became the Department of Environmental Regulation, or the Environmental Protection Agency. So that all of these things are spawning grounds of education, are they not? Now, the water problem, Lou Frey was great at it. Everybody wants to do something about it, but the truth is today, finally, Orlando has admitted that it's 130 million gallons of water short a day. St. Johns County is, you remember St. Johns County? Well, very few other people know where it is. St. Augustine, 20 million gallons short a day. You can't get a building permit in St. Johns County if you can't show where your water is coming from. And the building permits are required because everybody in Jacksonville wants to live and commute back up to from St. John's. Same thing about Clay County. So the water shortage exists, and it's going to get worse. Now, the people in Miami don't really give a happy hoot. Notice how I cleaned that up pretty good, huh? The people in Miami who are becoming dominant in the legislature don't really care about St. Johns County. They don't really care about Clay County. They barely care about Broward, and they certainly don't care much for Palm Beach County, where I'm from. But the water problem is all over the state now, and you've got to do something about it. The water management districts that were created by the other governors that you've already heard and made it work, and they have 5 districts. But those districts have now come to the conclusion. They don't broadcast it, they don't shout it, they kind of talk to each other and say, I don't want to mention anything in Tallahassee, but I don't want to mention anything, but you know, we can't get any more water out of the aquifer. Do you know what the aquifer is? Okay, those old people don't know. Help them. Go tell them what the aquifer is. You're the only ones with any education. They went through the Florida system. The aquifer will no longer support today's Florida, much less your Florida of 10, 20 years from now. When 10, 20 years, I'll be 100. And I'll come see how you're doing. They'll have a bunch of more governors, and I'll still be alive. You think that's funny? It gets serious when you're my age. No, I'm delighted. But I'm telling you, you've got to do something about it. The older governors that have talked to you already, they would love to, but they ain't got time to do anything about it. They don't have offices. They don't have anything. I can't do anything about it except to keep shouting. And that's why I'm shouting to you. The water is terrible. Now, Friday, I get to make a speech in Tallahassee. They don't let me in Tallahassee very often, but they ran out of speakers, so they had to have me. And I'm going to say to them that the next governors have got to make the sugar barons pay for the mess that they have created and get us clean water out of the Everglades, for the Everglades, and out of Lake Okeechobee, and stop destruction and pay the bill themselves. They play with the legislature. They pay all the carts of money to any legislature anywhere in the United States to keep the control of the sugar bonuses, which is called quota. when I became governor, there was no quota for Florida. The sugar industry didn't exist. And some clever people decided, they came from Cuba at the same time I came from Alabama, and they said, well, we'll just make sugar. And they did. And they said, well, we need support. And they got federal support. And so over and over, they asked for more federal support, and they made our Lake Okeechobee dirtier, dirtier, dirtier. And they were running the Everglades down, down, down. And they haven't cleaned it up. But they took the money that Washington gave them and put it in political campaigns. Now, isn't that interesting? It's almost like 67 sheriffs and 67 superintendents of education. You can't clean up something unless you control it. So you have a problem. If you want water other than the little bottle, you must now know that the St. John's Water Management Committee, am I running out of time?
Yes.
I'll quit then.
No, you got one more, because we want to ask you some questions when you're done. So,
Maybe I'll answer them, maybe I won't. The St. John's Water Management District is now saying, as I told you, they whispered, we no longer can take it from the aquifer. The only thing they can do is take surface water. That means the St. John's itself, St. John's River, and that has to be purified. Somebody has to pay for that plant. These are the issues, and I hand them all to you, and I'm delighted to be here, and now I'll answer a question.
Governor Kirk's rise in the mid-1960s was tied to a more general rise within the Republican Party of a younger group of politicians. The older group of Republican politicians in the state, in certain ways, wasn't terribly interested in contesting the Democrats, but a new generation grew up in Florida. And among those associated with Governor Kirk was a man by the name of Lou Frey, whom we're very fortunate to have here with us, who was associated with the Kirk campaign in 1966, and then went on to Washington, where he served as a long-term congressman from the Orlando area. He served with great distinction over, and I forget exactly how many years was it?
10.
Over 10 years, and then returned to the Orlando area, where he is a distinguished lawyer today. So I'd like to introduce Lou Frey, Congressman Lou Frey, who will make some comments on the Kirk administration, which he knew from the inside.
Thank you. For many of you, and I went back and looked at the notes, Florida was a totally different state. Governor Askew, Governor Graham, there were 2 million registered Democrats in '65 and 440,000 registered Republicans in '65. There were 2 Republicans in the state Senate and 10 in the state legislature. This was a Democrat state. Didn't mean it was a monolithic bloc at all, but it was a Democrat state. 7 of us, all around 30, took over the Republican Party in 1966 or 65, which was really no big deal. It was, probably all 50 people or something like that. But we took it over, and we were meeting in Gainesville to find somebody to run for governor. I had been the Kirk-Orlando Orange County chairman when we ran against Spencer Holland in '64, and we didn't have a candidate. And this Claude Kirk, who had disappeared for a while after '64, at least as far as we're concerned, flew in, I think, from Brazil on Friday. The filing date was Saturday lunch. And he flew in and said, I can win. I can be the candidate. You don't have anybody. I've got a great business background. He was a Marine. I thought he did a good job in '64, although we got wiped out. but you couldn't beat Spessard-Holland in those days. And so we, as a state party, got behind him. Little did we know that the Democrat Party would self-destruct. And what happened is that the liberal mayor of Miami, Robert King High, beat the incumbent Democrat governor, Hayden Burns. And when that happened, a lot of people around the state, especially from Orlando north, decided that they did not want a liberal Democrat mayor of Miami to be governor, and so they switched, and there was a great outpouring for Governor Kirk, and we won by 50-some% of the vote. It was an incredible upset, and it was a shock all over, including us. I mean, it was the campaign. We were pleased, but probably more surprised than anything else. I was privileged to have ended up as the general counsel of the Florida Turnpike, which Charlie Gray had worked on before, and some friends of mine. And I was up in Tallahassee. This was my first time up there wandering around. I'm trying to put it gracefully. Governor Kirk is a strong personality, was and still is in that, and knows his politics, but it was pretty tough politics in those days, and everything didn't go exactly as we wanted it. As a matter of fact, Governor Kirk holds the record for vetoes per year for all Florida governors. He had 27 a year. Governor Askew had 19.6. I don't know where the .6 came from. Governor Graham had 13, for instance, vetoes, and so there are a lot of vetoes. And so here I was, as a young guy, wandering around trying to get legislation through and trying not to get killed, trying to lobby for the governor. And that's why I ran for Congress. I figured, the heck with this. This is ridiculous. I'm going to go on my own and run for Congress. So I did. But it was a different world. And I think you heard the other governors say that it doesn't make any difference really who controls the legislature, because it's difficult to work with. Every governor and every governor's staff thinks they have the answers, and every member who's elected think they should be governor and they have the answers, and there's a natural tension which is really good. But it was a unique thing in Florida's history. I think 1870-something was the last time the Republican was there. All 6 members of the cabinet, all of whom had votes on many of the issues, were Democrats at the time. And the governor really had nowhere to go or nowhere to turn except on his own and his own force of personality and what he wanted to do. I have been proud of the association with the governor over the years. He took on an incredibly tough job and really broke ground for the Republican Party, because after that, to many of us out there and many of the other people, we said, hey, there is a chance as a Republican to run, and I think that's where you saw the rise of the Republican Party. I was the 4th member elected to Congress since 1870. I find it hard to believe that today, of the 25 members of the Congress, Rick, 18 are Republican, and the state is still Democrat in registration by 350 or 60,000. We have a divided state, as we've seen in the presidential elections. It is highly competitive, and a lot of that, the competition, goes to the fact that Governor Kirk won and set a good precedent and allowed many of us to follow along after him to try and bring competition to this state. And I personally think that competition in politics is extremely beneficial. I am personally worried over the lack of competition in the Congress, where only 30 seats are competitive, and I don't think that's good for our country. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I think it is a real problem. So anyway, Governor, thank you so much for what you've done and the leadership and all that you did. You set high marks, and we tried to follow and open up the state. And of all the many things you did, I think bringing a balance to our state, I think resulted in what happened, and the fine gentlemen who followed after you and what they were able to do too, because it wasn't good enough just to be average. You had to be really great to run this state as governor, and we've been fortunate, and you and the ones that have followed. So I know that the governor would like to respond to some questions, and we would hope that even though it's the end of the day, that some of you will go up and fire at him. And fire from the web. Oh, from the web, all right. Governor Kirk. This is from Daytona Beach. You know, we're on the web and we're at 26 or 27 schools around the state. What was your greatest accomplishment as governor? Please tell in some detail about what was most important to you. This is from Daytona Beach Community College.
Question, my greatest accomplishment? Answer, getting elected. The rest of it came about. EPA, Florida Bureau of Law Enforcement, tried to break the teachers' union, which I did not succeed in, and now that's all. What else would I have done?
Yeah. We'll stay there because there's going to be other questions, Governor.
You had mentioned earlier about the water supply or lack thereof, and you're handing it to my generation to take care of it. Well, do you have any suggestions on how to deal with it?
Well, the suggestion is that we face the issue. The issue is just everybody has tried to keep it down. And fortunately, Orlando has finally come around with the current mayor and both institutions here talking about the 130 million gallons. The problem is going to be in getting an authority that can have money in order to clean that surface water from the St. John's. That will be helpful for the north end of the state. For the south end of the state, everything below here is being affected by the Lake Okeechobee and the Everglades and the sugarcane problem. And I don't think I was quite clear, but let me make it clear one more time. Who used to say that? Let me make it clear. Somebody used to say that. The minute Castro is dead, the Van Hool family and all the sugar players that have bought all these politicians all these years that came here when I became governor will go back to Cuba, they'll go back to the Caribbean, they'll be in the Dominican, and they will be producing the low-cost sugar that they now get guarantees for. And therefore, if you're going to clean up and get that water, you have to get them to pay their bill. Get them to pay their bill. And that is the way it's up to the legislature to make them pay it. The governor can urge it, but they owe the money. And we need their money to clean up their mess. It's not our mess, it's their mess. Does that help you?
Yes, sir.
You talked earlier in your speech about change. What's a change you'd like to see today?
What change do I want to see today? I want to make the government commit itself to being a government. In my little Palm Beach County, we have 36 municipalities. We have 36 police chiefs. We have 36 fire chiefs. We have a school board made out of people who you don't even know their name. Therefore, I want one police chief in Palm Beach County, that's my idea. You got ideas, get them done. There's got to be some change made, and constant change. And is that hitting what you want to do?
Yes.
Wait a minute, where are your mom and dad?
Where are my mom and dad?
Yeah.
They're at work back in Jacksonville.
And they're in Duval County. That's a good example of what can be done. Now tell them what they need to do. They're going to vote in November, and tell them to take a position. Tell them to get behind a candidate. Or don't touch my son-in-law, however.
Regarding the water conservation, what can we do as consumers of water in the state of Florida to preserve it, or maybe to, not spend it so much? And also have another quick one. Also, you say that the water situation is critical. Is it critical because we need more environmental engineers to clean the water, or is it critical because there's too many people moving here?
The water problem it now exists has been under the cover for too long. The county commissioners of Volusia and the county commissioners of Flagler and the county commissioners of the other counties in the area all have talked about getting together and doing something. They don't do anything. Because why? Because they'd have to tax their people. And if you talk about saying to somebody, I want to build something that's good for Flagler and it's also good for us, your people are not going to listen. And therefore, no county commissioner and any voice that can hear me will ever vote for anything that affects the water because it's going to cost him money. And his taxpayers don't want to spend money on water. They think it's free. Therefore, you can't wait for the county commissioners to finally wind up and look out the door and see that the lawn is brown and they don't have water. And in Miami, of course, there would be condo operators, and they will not be able to sell their condo if it has no water with it. So you've got to have a state policy, and the next governor, whoever he may be, has got to enforce it and create it and pick up the cudgel, pick up the flag that Governor Askew gave us, that Governor Graham gave us, long-term Governor McKay gave us. That's a joke, because I love him, but he was there just for a little while. But he's a great lieutenant governor, but he's got a bigger picture in the hall than I do. And that kind of gets to me a little bit. I spent a lot of time there as governor. It's one thing to be lieutenant governor. You can walk all the way anywhere you want to go, and nobody will bother you. Is that it?
No, not it at all. There's two questions. This came over the web, and then you can get the young man down there and then answer the immigration issue. So that's the, you could read that one first.
Well, I have to put my glasses on.
I'll read it. Okay. And we'll get you. Governor, how has the governorship changed since you were governor? St. Leo's College. That's where it was from.
Yeah, well, St. Leo's College, I did some favors for them. We fixed the road in front of that one time. I wasn't a Roman Catholic, but a lot of Roman Catholics love me now for that. It's like, you know, little things in government. I was going to the Sheriff's Boys Ranch, which is now I-10 now, and you turn left and you go north to the Sheriff's Boys Ranch. And I said, how come there's no sign out there that tells you how you get to the Boys Ranch? And they said, well, Governor, you can't put a sign if you don't have a road named. You can't put a sign out there and it says Governor's Florida Boys Ranch. I said, well, name the road and put a sign out there today. And they got a nice sign, you watch it, and you can find the Florida Boys Ranch. But all you have to have is an executive that does something. The problem is that everybody looks at the legislature. God bless them. We got to have them. We got to have some laws. Otherwise, what the hell would a governor do? We have to have laws to enforce, to implement. We've got to get them from the legislature, but you've got to have an executive that will stand up. Now, fortunately, each and every one of these gentlemen who carried the cudgel after I did stood up, and they are stand-up type guys. But I want to know where we're going from here. And that's what you have to say to them. Because let me tell you the difference. Governor Askew spoke a little bit about it. I heard him speak a little bit about it. I didn't hear Governor Graham, but I can imagine. The money is a terrible thing that is buying all the power it's ever expected. Lots of money. If you want to run for office, you have to have, you heard, a lot of money. Well, if you take that money, then they expect something in return. Now, those cabinet officers I told you about, who were the agricultural cabinet member, he just took it from the farmers. The treasurer, he only took it from insurance companies and bankers. Now, if you get them all in one guy, and one guy buys them all, then he becomes the power. And that's the problem. Did that answer that question?
Yes.
I was reading that while you were governor, you started a constitutional, an act to change the constitution of the state. How were you able to do that in a state that was entrenched in such a corrupt machine?
Well, you asked me how did the Constitution Convention come about?
To change it?
It came about because it was in process. They had a law that said every 10 years, 20 years, they have to look at the Constitution. That did exist. However, they never got an agreement out of the Constitutional Revision Commission that could be voted on by the people and get it accepted. The Constitutional Revision Commission with Governor Askew and other members did a good job. And then they had to go to the people who didn't want to change. All those cabinet officers and all those guys that were paying that money didn't want to change. In fact, the only reason that all that hard work resulted in the new Constitution of 1968, right, was because of a personality clash. A governor, that was me, and a big, well, I won't say big, not tall, fat, round, rich man that didn't want to change anything. He owned the legislature, and he was a banker. His name was Ed Ball, and he wanted to be sure it didn't get passed, and he brought everybody to work. The only reason that we passed that legislation was a picture of me pointing at a map like this that the media published, and the media saved and passed that Constitution because it said Kirk and Ed Ball are at war, and Ed Ball did this, and it got a picture in the paper. Not logic, not any, just the media, the fourth written word, which you're going to explain, the fourth estate's written word. That's the fourth estate is TV and radio. Forget it, the written word. Martin Dyckman, the old terrible-looking fellow out there from the St. Petersburg Times. The other reporters from the St. Petersburg Times. You got to be ugly to work for that firm. But be that as it may, the written word is a magnificent safeguard. Our laws are not written on TV tape, are they? They're written words. Words mean something. Words are something. And the St. Petersburg Times, God love them, if there's the only place in America that you can go get the facts right this minute, and it'll be right. Now, philosophically, they might have an opinion that differed with mine. Because why? Because the guy owns the paper. Why shouldn't they have their own philosophy? Why shouldn't they advocate something? Unfortunately, there are not more papers in competition. But the St. Petersburg Times is the reason I got elected. You heard all these other reasons? St. Petersburg, am I answering your question?
Yes.
Are you tired of this?
Not at all. I find it very interesting.
St. Petersburg Times, you get the media to make these people do their job. If it wasn't for the St. Petersburg Times, correcting you a little bit, I wouldn't be governor. There was a fight, was there not? We knew that the two sides of the Democratic Party were going to fight. But the truth of the matter was that the media exposed Governor Burns for being the petty crook that he was, and that gave the entree. Because of why? Because for investigative reporting done by a marvelous reporter named Martin Waldron. Martin Waldron was my friend forever and did a great job. The problem today is the papers cannot afford to have investigative reporters because they have to buy too much insurance. I'm just wandering now, but I'm getting my points across while I act like I'm answering your question.
Thank you very much.
Last question, Governor, over here, sir. Last question over here.
Yes. I lived during the time of your governorship, and probably the most traumatic thing at that time, since I was a public school administrator, was the teacher walkout. And that at that time was really a big thing. What do you have anything to comment about your role in the teacher walkout during your administration?
For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, the teachers' union attempted to form itself, a union to form a union itself. And in order to have membership in the union, you're going to sit down or you're going to come over here? You worry me. Sit down.
I've asked my question. Go ahead.
the teachers' union was not represented by all the teachers in the state. However, if you get in a mob and somebody makes most of the noise and threatens you, and you don't mind standing there, but you don't want to get in a fight, so you stand there. A great many of the teachers were not interested in the union. I was interested in the union if they would say, we're going to educate children, we're going to make teachers pass tests from time to time to show that they're still good teachers, we're going to make them clean themselves up in the sense of mentally effort, and the best teacher in the second grade can get more money for being that best teacher and doesn't have to go to be superintendent of the band in order to get a pay raise. You can stay in the second grade and teach forever. That didn't please the union, and it doesn't please the union today. The most powerful political unit in Florida today is the teachers' union. I stood up against the small little teachers' union and said, no way, go away, strike. And they did what they were entitled to do. They struck. And the mothers of Florida love me. Oh my God, the first day there's a man that's standing up for us, for our children. Then a week and a half later, they got tired of looking at their children at home. And they called me all kinds of names and said, if you don't get my children back in school, I'm going to come whip you. Well, we did break the strike, but this union did survive, and it is now the most powerful unit in Florida. And if you want to be governor, you got to go kiss the teachers' union. I don't think that's right. If they're not willing to be teachers, I don't care if the power is there. If they'll take that other 40% of those children and teach them and keep them in there until they're in the 12th grade and give them a graduation certificate, God bless them, they can have all the unions they want.
Thank you very much, Governor.